Hello, everybody. Welcome to the November webinar. This will also go on YouTube and on the podcast. If you are, as always, if you're registered, you'll have these video replay emailed to you so you can see the slides. If you're joining us live, obviously you can see the slides. If you're calling in, you will get the replay. If you're a podcast listener, you can go on YouTube and see the slides there. So, hello, Chris.
Hello, Dan.
How's it going?
It's going.
We had 147, maybe 150 people registered for this event.
Yeah, that we did.
It's the most registrants we have ever had so far.
Yeah, it's always increasing. Every webinar is more and more.
Every webinar is more and more. So this one, I don't know if it's just... hello, how's it going? I don't know if it's the topic or if it's just the time of the year or when the email went out, but there's a lot of interest in this. So we're going to go through the different types of monitoring visits. We're going to deconstruct the most common ones. And this is going to be particularly helpful for research sites that are maybe new, or new coordinators or new PIs. It's also helpful for people looking to break into the industry, maybe to be coordinators or to be CRAs. So we're just going to go through these different type of monitoring visits and talk about some things you should look out for, both from the CRA side as well as from the research site side. So next slide, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
We got to hover.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to break this down, Chris? 4 types of monitoring visits. We're having one right now.
Was this already there?
Yeah, you just have to hover over it.
And then it populates with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Technical confusion. Okay, so there are 4 types of monitoring visits. There's the site selection visit, or SSV. And there's many different acronyms for this visit. PSSV, PSV, and they're all the same thing. Except for when sometimes PSV or PSSV could stand for phone site selection visit. That's done over the phone. Typically, if your site has not previously worked with a sponsor or a CRO, it's going to be an in-person site selection visit, so they're going to come to your site. Again, if you've previously worked with a sponsor or a CRO, they may choose to do a phone site selection visit. There's no reason to send somebody to view your site as they're familiar with it. And the site selection visit typically is done to. Sorry, Dan's.
The SSVs are nerve-wracking. SSVs are nerve-wracking when it comes to research sites. So we have a lot of clients, right? And most of them are, not most, many are research naive. And we had one just text you an hour before this webinar. I have 2 SSVs, so back-to-back days.
Yep.
And this is my first SSV ever. So they're extremely nerve-wracking. For the CRA, on the CRA side of things, it's actually not that difficult to do a site selection visit, but the report that you have to do afterwards, which we're going to get into, is by far the longest report a CRA will ever write.
I have a question.
From all these visits.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who's the target audience of this webinar? Is it sites
everybody,
or is it CRAs?
It's both.
It's both. Okay.
I don't know if CRAs already probably know these things. Maybe new CRAs.
You would hope.
Actually, we've been surprised. We've seen experienced CRAs that
have some questions you would expect them to know the answers to.
Yeah, or don't have a basic understanding. But I think you can never have enough of this. I mean, we're deconstructing the most common types of monitoring visits. We're not including the booster visits, which are like enrollment pep talks that the CRAs come out to when the site is not enrolling. And we're not including the pre-audit visits when the CRAs are sent out prior to either a sponsor, IRB, or FDA audit. Basically, they're just cleaning everything up. It's kind of like an interim monitoring visit, but on steroids.
I suppose that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, everybody can benefit from this. So next slide. Is that good? Did you mention the 4 types?
No, we just did SSV.
Okay, so the first one is site selection visit. We're going to get into that. The next one is site initiation visit. Then it's interim monitoring visit. And finally, it's closeout visit. We're going to break down each one.
I was going into much more detail, but okay.
On the next slides, yeah.
Okay.
Amy did a fantastic job on these slides.
Well, I didn't look at them, so.
As always, if you have questions, chat here. Somebody added a question, but I can't see it. So if you can send it again, that would be fantastic. Site selection visits. Go ahead, Chris. We have one right now.
You do?
Oh, no, we don't have a site selection visit. We have an interim monitoring visit.
IMV.
We have an IMV, interim monitoring visit, going on right now in this very clip that we are doing this webinar from. All right, break it down. Site selection
breaking
visit.
this down. Then you cut me off.
Well,
You
break it
distracted
down.
me with
Break it
recording.
down. Here's how we can do this. From the perspective of the site, you can discuss.
Sure.
And then I'll add color. And then from the perspective of the CRA, I will discuss and you add color.
Okay.
Fair?
Sure.
Okay, so site selection visits from the perspective of the site.
All right. So our bullet points here say the main objectives are assessing site capabilities, and this is by far the most important aspect of a site selection visit. Are you capable of recruiting these patients, whatever the study may be for? Is the site capable of getting these patients? And again, that's by far and away the most important topic or aspect of whether or not to give your site the study. And then secondly, are you capable of doing the study? And capabilities, when I say capable, I mean from a safety perspective in conducting the study. Does your PI have experience in this indication? Again, these are all important, but they're secondary to do you have access to these patients? Can you recruit these patients? That's by far the most important aspect. And then secondly, you have all the other intricacies of the study, right? Intricacies of conducting it, experience with the indication, and so on. Then there's the enrollment projections. Again, that gets back to recruitment, which I just discussed. The experience of the staff. Again, is your PI, essentially your PI have experience with this indication. And sure, it's great if your coordinator does and other staff as well, but it really boils down to the PI. Yeah, you agree?
Yeah, I'm just listening. I mean, which one of these do you think is most important?
Enrollment projections, right?
By far, you think?
By far.
Okay.
You disagree?
No. I just think every study is different focus, but they're all, the main focus obviously is to enroll on time.
Right.
Right? But then sometimes you have studies where the FDA is looking for certain things. There's sometimes you have a study where the sponsor knows they're going to be audits, right? Like FDA audits.
Sure.
Like the FDA has pretty much told the sponsor, we will audit
Well, I mean,
a lot of your sites
you
for
have
this
protected
study.
populations too, in which
Right.
obviously they're going to be a lot more active in auditing those studies.
Like pediatric studies.
Exactly.
You know, if you're a high enroller in a pediatric study, you can almost guarantee an FDA audit
You
at
would
some
think.
point, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes, I mean, enrollment's always number one, but sometimes the experience is more important than the site capabilities, or vice versa. You know, it just depends. It depends on what kind of mix of sites the sponsors have.
Elaborate. What do you mean? Mixed
So
sites.
you can't just have a lot of high enrolling sites with little experience, like amongst all your sites.
Are you concerned about the data at that point?
Yes, data integrity. So that, you know, this is why universities come into
But isn't
play.
that why we have CRAs?
That's why we have CRAs, and we're going to get into the CRA aspect. This might go on much longer than an hour. We're only on slide 3.
And how many slides do we have?
Only 10, but still.
Okay.
At this rate, we're not finishing this.
So, again, getting back to sites that can enroll, right? But maybe they don't do a great job with data. That's where the CRA plays an important role in this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're guiding the site on how to have clean or better data, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I think if the study's full SDV, right? I think enrollment is by far and away the largest focus here. No?
Yes, enrollment it will be.
Did we lose?
That's always number one.
What were you doing there?
No, there's people typing in questions, but I'm not seeing it in the chat. So if you typed in a question, I'm not seeing it. Just type it in the chat. I don't even know how you do a question on this thing. Okay, so what about SOPs? They always ask for your informed consent SOP, and they may ask for study-specific SOPs, like if it's a PK study, they're going to ask for your SOPs on PK, or if it's an imaging study, they're going to ask for the specific vendor that you're using. Let's say it's MRI or PET scan. They're going to ask for SOPs for that particular vendor.
If you're transporting IP, they might want to see a IP transportation SOP. Yeah, I mean, or you're destroying drug on site, which is not typical these days.
Yeah.
I want to see the SOP for that, but those are rarities.
Okay, here's the question. If PI experience is that important, how would an inexperienced physician secure a study? Aha. That's the question. There's no rule to this, unfortunately. The sponsors do not have a manual for who gets selected and who doesn't. It all boils down to you, how you conduct your feasibility survey, and what you demonstrate during the site selection visit. Sometimes they care a little less about experience because they need patients.
Yep. Enrollment.
Sometimes they care more about experience because they know enrollment's not going to be that tough. So you got to until you gain some experience, you're going to have to take on projects that are more difficult.
I would agree.
Right? And so it's not going to be easy when you first start out. You're going to have to take projects
that maybe you get 1 or 2 patients for
that other people don't want to do. It's like how we started our CRO. We didn't just get a international multi-center phase 3 study. We got an investigator-initiated cancer study that nobody wanted to do. Basically, we're doing it at cost. Why? So we can gain experience, so that we can do those. So there's a bit of a sacrifice when it comes to these things.
And you can make money on these more difficult trials. Typically, they pay a little bit better because the sponsors know that these are difficult studies.
Right. It's all supply and demand.
Right, and you enroll 1 or 2 patients, you'll make some money off of that. You're not going to retire off of this revenue, of course, but you make a little bit of money and you'll get experience.
Your goal when you're starting out is not how can I retire.
Right.
If that's your mentality, it's over for you before it even starts.
But you have to get some experience to get these lucrative studies.
Exactly, and that doesn't mean that you can't get an easy study as your first study either. It's just a numbers game. You have to constantly apply, get better at doing the feasibility surveys, get better at highlighting your strengths, not your weaknesses, be a better salesperson, and figure out, really what it boils down to is figuring out what the sponsor wants for that study and finding a way to communicate and articulate that you can do that. If you can. If you can't, then you're lying. So it's not a good strategy either.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now from a CRA perspective, all right, I moonlight as a CRA. Moonlight. That's my side hustle as a CRA. It's strange. You've done some monitoring too, Chris.
Sure.
A little. It's strange how different the same visit. Let's take site selection visit as an example. I've been in this industry since 2005 full time. I've only started monitoring in 2016 part time.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in far more site selection visits as a site than a CRA. But it's strange how the same visit, site selection visit, can be so different based on your perspective.
Sure.
Which side of the table you're on. If you're the site, all you're trying to do is impress the CRA. Hey, we have great capabilities. Our enrollment projections are this, this, and that. Our staff have this, this, and this experience. Let's take a tour. Do you want some donuts? Do you want some coffee?
Sure.
Do you want a back rub? Like, what do you want?
Dan's going a little far here, but yeah, we get the point.
These are our SOPs. All right, as a CRA, you actually don't really care about these things.
Yeah, you might want a donut.
You want a donut and coffee. But you don't necessarily care what the site's telling you. You're just trying to document and capture all this information, which is coming at you quickly.
Right. I mean, you have this template you have to populate with these answers.
And those site selection visit monitoring reports are extremely detailed. And most of your lead CRAs or project manager, whomever is looking at your report, is going to be asking for details. And so each of these bullet points, and there's many more, but each of these bullet points is like multiple paragraphs of explanation on this report.
And oftentimes you won't, as a CRA, capture all of this information, and you'll have to go back to the site with questions. Hey, I need additional information.
Yep. I need the names of all the sub-buys, who's going to be, when was their last GCP, when has their CV been updated, what's your SOPs, I need a copy of your informed consent. Like, they just want to collect. They don't necessarily care that, like, it's strange because sites try to impress CRAs, but CRAs could care less. They just want to get their report done. So
I would say the majority.
Right.
Like, from the site perspective, I've met a few CRAs that there was something amiss, right, personality-wise, between the CRAs and the site.
And they knew that they didn't want that site.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you get that too. But for the most part, that doesn't happen.
Correct.
For the most part, if you're a site, if you try to help your CRA complete their site selection visit report, you're going to get the study.
Well, they're already sending somebody out to your site, so they intend to give you that study.
I have a funny story, and it's true. At one of my sites, we had a site selection visit. The monitor didn't know that I'm a monitor too. And he's super busy. All he does is site selection visits. He basically told me to complete his report for him. Yeah. He said, here, he has a report, but he didn't know that I knew what a monitoring report was. He said, fill out this form so I can write my report. But when he sent me his form, it was his report.
It was his template?
Yeah, so I filled it out. And that's really what they care about. Now, you're not going to get that the majority of the time, but the questions they're asking are...
Did that site get the study?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And did he... You wouldn't know... Well, you would know this. Did he use your verbiage?
I don't know. He could have changed it, but... I mean, he needed the information there, like the details.
Sure.
You know, so those kind of things.
But I would assume you wrote it from kind of like the CRA would write it, right?
Right.
You wrote it in third person.
No, I
Oh,
didn't, because I wasn't supposed to know that I know what that
okay.
is. Okay. So you probably edited it. Actually, one more thing about site selection visit. You always say this. It's your favorite thing to say to clients.
Okay.
The site selection visit is yours to lose.
Oh, yeah.
The study is yours to lose. Explain that before we move on.
Well, we kind of already touched on that a little, but so the process here of getting a study, which I'm sure most of you know this, but a few probably do not. The process of getting a study is first you fill out a CDA so they can send you the information on the study, the synopsis for the protocol or the protocol itself, and a feasibility questionnaire. Once you complete that feasibility questionnaire, it's reviewed, and if they like your answers, then they send somebody out to your site to inspect it. At that point, once they've sent somebody out to your site, they intend to give you the study. Unless something changes from their understanding of on the feasibility questionnaire to the tour of the site. PI doesn't confirm the numbers that you put for enrollment. Whoever filled out the feasibility questionnaire put different numbers than the PI is willing or able to confirm. Something like that. If that changes, then you may lose the study. But they're already spending time and money on coming out to your site, so it's your study to lose.
Yeah, it's very important to know. This actually helps take the pressure off of the sites.
Yeah, if you can just confirm everything that you have in your feasibility questionnaire, and when I say you, I mean the site in general and the PI specifically.
You should both be on the same page.
Yeah, it's your study.
Your study to lose. So if you have a site selection visit scheduled, they want to use your site. If you give them indications that they shouldn't use your site, they won't. But for the most part,
even sometimes they will.
Even then they will. If the study is difficult to enroll.
Yeah.
They know it's supply and demand too. Okay, site initiation visit. My least favorite as a site. And probably my favorite as a CRA. They're the shortest.
Easiest, yeah.
For the CRA.
Right.
For the site,
unless you have a really unorganized site, I could see this being a difficult visit. I've never done a site initiation visit as a CRA. I will soon. I assume.
Yeah, I just did one last month.
As soon as our CRO project...
that's going to kick off very soon.
You would think, and there'll be some site initiation visits done. But I've yet to do one. The only time I could see this being difficult as a CRA, and please correct, I'm providing color now.
Okay.
Please correct. Is if you have a very unorganized site, right? They've done nothing with regulatory. It's I can't find the 1572. It's not in the the site finder. I can't find financial disclosure. I mean, just everything's unorganized, right?
Well, even that. I mean, if it's unorganized, it's not like you're, as the CRA, are going to sit there until those things get filed. They're just action items. The site won't be activated until they have those things filed.
Right. So, but typically the way it works as a site, you send off these documents, right, to the sponsor or CRO, that you have them, they're completed, right, and then you're supposed to file them, right?
Right.
ISF, right?
Right. So let's break it down. So there's a site selection visit. Nothing is done yet. There's no regulatory documents. They're just doing, so far what has been done is a feasibility survey, and then the monitor comes out and does a monitoring report. That's it. Then the site gets notified of whether they were selected or not, usually with a letter, right? Now, if they were selected, they get all the startup regulatory documents sent to them. They get the contract and budget sent to them, the kind of stuff Chris does every day. If you're not selected, obviously you get nothing. But if you're selected, you get startup regulatory, contract, and budget. The goal is, prior to the SIV, these things are done by the site. This is the site's responsibility to do. Contract and budget, as well as the startup regulatory. Okay, so the SIV, it's still on.
All right.
Anyone having problems seeing the screen? Hopefully not.
Or hearing us?
I don't think so. I see the mic there. Yeah. Okay, so break it down from a site perspective. The site, SIV.
Well, again, I think both from the CRA perspective and I think from the site side, this is a fairly easy visit, right? In my opinion.
I think the SIVs are the least favorite for PIs.
Well, sure, because they get their training.
It takes the most out of their time.
PIs, yes.
PIs, yes.
Sites in general, no, right?
Sites in general, yeah.
Well, it's not. You have the study, right? There's nothing to lose here.
There's no pressure.
Right.
It's just now the work begins.
Well, most of the work really has been done, hopefully, right? One of the most common things that I see that are not done from the site that should be done prior to the CRA arriving for the SIV is the delegation of duties, right? That hasn't been completed.
And the training log.
Well, that's done that day.
That's done that day by the CRA.
Correct.
So if you're a CRA and you're going to your first SIV, you should do everything on the slide. But if you, let's say you had to pick one, you have to do that training log. That's like the entire purpose of you going out, is to train the PI and the staff on the protocol.
You got to do two things, right? I would agree with the training, but you also got to make sure that delegation of duties log is filled out as well.
Right.
Because a lot of sites, in my experience, a lot of sites do not complete these until the CRA arrives.
Right. So then it's on the CRA to do it.
To make sure it gets done.
But what the CRA can say, like what I told the site when I had my SIV, is complete your delegation log. and it was an action item.
Sure, and you're not allowed to see patients until I see a copy of this.
Right. So it's actually an easy visit for the CRAs. For the PIs hate SIVs. It takes the most of their time, probably 30 minutes to 60 minutes.
Well, I've seen as long as an hour and a half.
For PIs?
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the protocol training. So that's what you do. Also, you make sure everyone has EDC access, IWRS access, lab ECG access, study-specific portal access, IRB approval.
So, CRA question.
Yeah.
What is the CRA training the site with, the PI specifically? What does the CRA do? They're just reading slides, right?
Yeah, they have protocol slides. Yeah. Sponsor-approved protocol slides.
Prepared by the sponsor.
Yeah. Nope. Not unless you're at a CRO, DSCS.
Yeah.
We're going to have our CRAs do all that.
Right. And, well, you may not even have slides. You just may have the
I
protocol.
know, we have slides. We have slides even for the ones we did.
We haven't done an SIV yet.
Mm-hmm.
We have not.
Dr. Bruckner.
No, that was an SSV.
No, that was an SIV. We presented slides and everything.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So, yeah, usually they're prepared for you.
Yeah, they weren't prepared well, now that I recall.
Sure. Well or not well is different.
It might have been better just have the protocol out and start reading from that.
They were there. So it's not, again, this is not that difficult of a visit for CRAs, and it's not that tough of a report to write. And for sites, there's no pressure. The biggest challenge is going to be convincing your PI, if you don't have a very engaged PI, which most of them are not. I would say half are not.
I would agree.
They're going to be complaining. Yeah. This is where, if you're a site owner, you got to communicate to your PI, listen, we haven't gotten paid anything yet. Once we start screening, we're doing this visit so we can have the privilege of screening patients.
Privilege?
Yeah. The privilege of screening so that we can start monetizing. Because we really haven't gotten paid anything except the small startup fee, which can be bigger if Chris negotiates your budgets. So tell your PI that also. Okay. And then you make sure they have lab kits, make sure they have the study drug.
Basically, everything to do the study is there and ready to be used.
Source docs, study drug, lab kits. Basically, if a screening were to happen today...
Do they have all the necessary tools to do the study?
Yes. Can you complete the screening visit?
Do they? And then some things are not listed. Oh, yeah, it is. EDC access. Yeah.
So
everything is listed there.
If everything on the slide is ready, then the site can be activated.
Right.
Usually, there's a few pending action items, so the site can't necessarily start screening until they complete those action items.
It's 50-50. Your favorite saying, 50-50.
That's not my favorite saying. That's someone we know's favorite saying.
But it's 50-50, I would say, on most studies. Whether or not at the SIV you will be allowed to start screening that day or the next day.
Right.
Usually
Okay.
something of an action item.
Slide 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Anything else about SIV that we forgot?
Making good time.
SIV.
No, I think it's all there, and I think we did a good job covering it.
Yeah.
Anybody feel the need, you can correct us in the chat.
Okay, closeout, but this is out of order. Interim monitoring visits should be next, and then we'll go back to closeout visit slide. So, because we want to do this in order.
Right.
So, interim monitoring visits. This is where most of your monitoring visits will be, right?
You would think.
Yeah.
Unless you don't enroll any patients.
Right. So then you'll have a bunch of booster visits, or maybe just one or two, and then you'll drop.
That'll be your primary study visit, booster visit.
Right. So every IMV will be different, even for the same study, depending on what is required at each site. This is before we even get into risk-based monitoring, where they have a different plan for each site.
Sure.
So, for example, if I'm a CRA and I have 4 sites that I'm doing for the same study that I'm doing interim monitoring visits for, my activities follow the same structure, but the emphasis could be different. Site 1 could have had a SAE that I need to follow up on. Site 2 could have had a deviation. Site 3 could have had a temperature excursion. And Site 4 maybe is not enrolling patients. Or slacking on their regulatory.
Or entering their data. Or any number of things.
Any number of things. So your reports while they follow the same structure, and people who want to be CRAs always ask me, what's the order? Like, if I have an interim monitoring visit, what do I need to do first? And I say, there's many ways to do this. I say, follow the order of your report.
That's funny.
And usually it starts with informed consents and then it works its way down to regulatory.
It's funny that you state that, because I've never been asked this question from our students that come here to intern.
I get asked that all the time.
I've never gotten asked that question until recently, our most recent group of students. What do I know what to tell them? First? Well, I told them, it's really up to you. There is no standard on how you do these things, but I think most monitors, the first thing that they tackle is regulatory.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should ask
the regulatory binders. And
maybe we should ask the monitor who's here. Here's the rationale for why they would do regulatory first.
Well, it needs to be audit ready, and it's the easiest.
It's the easiest, but here's the real rationale: is if there's a new staff and they haven't been trained, because that's going to take time.
They can see if they need to have time for that.
Yes. What I do as a monitor, I go in, I talk to the coordinator, I say, have there been any, like one of the first questions I ask is, did you complete all previous action items from last time? I get an answer. Then I say...
Let's pause right there real quick.
Yeah.
From a site's perspective, what's the best way to deal with those action items, right? What is CRAs like?
Here's what CRAs like. It's very related, and then we're going to get to your question. If they follow a guide, they may cover all their bases. Yes, your monitoring report is your guide. Okay, so as a CRA, when I first go to the site, I say, did you finish all your previous action items? Are there any new staff members? That's it. That's really all it is. And I also ask, were there any new screenings? Mm-hmm. Right, that's pretty much. But then I know from there.
Probably already know that, don't you, from EDC?
The
screenings?
But you don't know if you know that from IWRS, from EDC, maybe they didn't enter it.
True.
Right? Maybe all you see is 13 subjects.
I did mean IWRS. But...
Yeah, maybe you only see 13 subjects in there, but they actually have 15. They just didn't enter it. Right? So I always ask, just to be sure. And what I like to see as a CRA, and I've instructed Monica at Global to do this, the coordinator at my site, is when the monitor comes, before they even ask, when you sit them down, bring their follow-up letter from the last visit and go through all the action items and let them know what's been done and if something hasn't been done, why.
Yeah.
That's it. You're saving them like 20 to 30 minutes just by doing that.
And they love this, right?
They love this.
Yeah.
The first time it happened to me, I was like blown away. And I never realized that as a site owner, that's what CRAs...
So having perspective on both sides...
Extremely valuable.
Helps.
I would monitor for free.
Well, I don't know about that.
I wouldn't get on a plane for free, but I would monitor for free.
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah. Okay. So that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think that's helpful. I think that's helpful to sites.
I think so too. So every IMV will be different, right? Sometimes protocol deviations become important for that site. Sometimes recruitment. Sometimes the site's not doing SDR properly or entering data properly or answering queries. Sometimes sites have unreported SAEs or SAEs that require follow-ups or AEs. It could be a number of things. Sometimes training is lacking. There's really no way to know. There's no roadmap other than following your monitoring report and making sure that the emphasis is being placed where it needs to be. And oftentimes your project manager is going to be helping you with this as well.
But not all reports are perfect, right? They don't encompass every possibility, right? For example, I would assume, what happens if you encounter an SAE that hasn't been filed? Is that in your monitoring report? Has there been SAEs that were unfiled?
Like a SAE, yeah.
Is that in the report?
Yeah.
It is? Okay.
I found one that wasn't reported as a monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, hey, PI, I talked to the PI, I said, this should be a SAE. And he said, yeah. So it was in my report that I discovered it and they should submit it.
And they had 24 hours from that point.
Well, it was a deviation because they didn't do it from when it actually occurred.
Actually, how does that work?
That'd be deviation.
So, okay.
Yeah. Or
So
maybe a GCP violation, I think would be
so if a
better.
site deems something an AE, right, not an SAE, an AE, and the CRA comes in and says, no, this is an SAE, this needs to be filed as an SAE.
So the way I wrote it in my report, I talked to the PI and he agreed it's a SAE.
Right.
If he were to disagree with me, then I would escalate it to the medical monitor. And it would be in my report exactly what happened.
Sure.
I'm not forcing any outcomes. I'm just documenting what's going on.
You're not the PI. The PI is the authority at the site.
Correct.
You can only give guidance.
Correct. And I'm paid to catch things.
Exactly. Your quality assurance.
As a CRA, yes. And as a site, you're paid to collect data properly and follow GCP and all that other stuff.
When does the 24-hour clock start ticking?
As soon as the site is made aware of the SAE.
But if they deem it an AE, is that still when it starts ticking?
That'd be for the medical monitor.
To decide?
I would think
that'd
that's
be more the IRB to decide. No?
No, I don't think the IRBs care about that. They're too busy buying other companies. Apparently, from what we've heard.
I know it's a dumb question, but I never really thought of it, right?
It's not dumb.
PI finds an AE, says it's an AE. Monitor comes in, says it's a PI 2 weeks later. So is that a deviation of 2 weeks, or does the 24-hour clock start there?
I'm not even sure if it's a deviation as much as it is like a GCP violation, not reporting an SAE.
But if we're deemed initially an AE.
But it was deemed an AE because of lack of oversight.
No, the PI saw it and said this is an AE. But then after discussing with the monitor.
With the medical monitor.
Or even the CRA.
Well, then if it is changed to an SAE, the date should still be the same.
True, I guess.
So, yeah, I mean, these kind of things are what you're going to be dealing with as a CRA and as a site, too.
Yep.
For interim monitoring visits, right? If it is a part of the protocol,
yeah, if the protocol
would that be protocol decision?
Well, if the protocol defines what an SAE is, and oftentimes they do, then of course that's a deviation.
Right.
If the protocol defines the SAEs.
Correct.
But if it doesn't, and it's left up to GCP, then it's like you said. It's not a protocol deviation, but what is it?
It's more like a... I don't know. I mean, if it was due to a lack of oversight, it's a violation. If it's due to new information, then it's not.
Right.
But you still have to report the SAE as occurring when it did.
Right.
Okay, closeout visit. Pretty simple. Sounds simple. I have yet to do a closeout visit as a CRA. So, main objective for the closeout visit is mentioned wrong. Yes. The closeout, this is the main objective for closeout, is not site activation. It's actually the opposite. Deactivation. DE dash is missing from here. And also, is the site ready to screen patients? No. This is wrong. So yeah, so closeout SAEs. Everything you're doing at a closeout visit is exactly what it sounds like. Are all EDC casebooks signed by the PI? Are all queries answered? Are they now frozen? They're going to do data reconciliation at the end, and then they'll sign it out. Is the IRB notified that the site is closed?
Yeah.
Right? IP reconciliation. Make sure all research staff... No, this is IP reconciliation is totally different. IP reconciliation, you're making sure that all IP is accounted for, and you're making sure that it is either destroyed or returned back to the sponsor or the appropriate vendor. All right, and then the lab kits, you make sure they're destroyed. You make sure any equipment that needs to be returned is returned. And those are the important things, right? And also SAEs. You're making sure that the SAEs have been closed out.
And again, you're provided with a template that you follow.
So someone asks, what happens to the remaining drug? So the remaining drug...
Typically it's returned, but sometimes it's destroyed on site.
Yes, it depends on the sponsor. Sometimes the sponsor wants it back.
Usually they want it back.
To use for another study or something.
Or whatever the rationale, but usually they want it back. But not always.
Not always. Sometimes they don't want it back, and they want the site to destroy it.
And then that's where you've probably, at your SIV or SSV, provided your SOP on what you do.
A lot of acronyms.
Yeah, right. What you do with the drug if you're taking on the responsibility of destroying it on site. How do you do this? And they want to see the SOP with that.
Right. I guess meeting with the PI. This is an interesting topic, near and dear to my heart.
Why is that?
Because as a site owner, you have to sometimes beg your PI to show up to meet with the monitors.
Oh, at the closeout?
At any visit.
Depends on the PI.
So as a site, obviously your PI should be there at every monitoring visit. Is it the end of the world if they're not?
Not at the INVs, but definitely necessary at a few of the visits, right? You definitely,
SSV or SIV.
If you as a site want the study, you want them there at the SSV, right?
Right.
Because if the monitor, if the PI doesn't have time to meet with the monitor for the SSV, when are they ever going to have time for the CRA?
Right.
So you want to show that the PI, as a site, you want to show that the PI has time to do this study.
Right.
So it's best if they're there for the SSV.
We've had many SSV without a PI there.
Yeah.
And they substituted it with a phone call.
Yeah.
And we still got it.
Sometimes it does okay, and sometimes it doesn't.
That's where experience, I think, plays in also. Like if it's an experienced site, the sponsor really likes that PI, which for us, over there, they actually like the PI a lot.
Right.
Because of speaking and all that. So,
right.
you know, I didn't even tell you this. From the 6 studies we have active right now, he speaks for 4 of those sponsors.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I know. So
well, I knew about 1.
Yeah. So they're excused from meeting every time, but it's still good if they're there. It reflects on PI oversight.
Sure.
Which is another webinar in and of itself. Maybe we'll do a webinar on that next month.
But I would say SSV, SIV, and COV. Best if the PI is there for those 3.
Closeout visit, yeah, because the PI. So this is actually another question too, and then I'll get to yours, Shannon. But what about making sure the delegation of authorities log is signed when a staff leaves or the company new staff is added at the last minute? Yes. If it's an interim monitoring visit and there's a new staff member or a staff member left, the delegation log needs to be updated. Same with the 1572. If it's a closeout visit, the PI needs to put an end date for everybody on the delegation log. And that's it. And then initial and date it. Okay. Another question, do you charge sponsors for destruction of your IP in the budget? Yeah, you ask for it if it's required. What else do you charge for? Some lesser known things. I know this is not a budget. Possible. Anything you can, but what? Give us something real.
Okay, here's an item that most people probably don't ask for. Everything that you ask for, sponsors typically have in their SOPs what they're willing to pay for and what they're not willing to pay for. Right. So don't expect to get everything, right? Except for in the case where you tell the sponsor, I'm not doing this study unless I get this, whatever it might be. In that case, you run a good chance of not getting that study. But sometimes the sponsor will bend and give it to you. Okay, outside of that, they have in their SOPs what they're willing to pay for. So a lot of times you're not going to get what you request. But one item that you can request is monitoring visits, being paid for monitoring visits.
Yeah, I saw that in your budgets.
I would say about a third of the time you'll get that.
And you bill for those at the end.
You can ask and you can bill as they occur. I think that's a little bit more difficult to track.
You probably need a CTMS to do it automatically for you.
I think it's easiest to wait until the end if you're doing it yourself. Wait until the end and just do them all at one time.
But if you're automating that, you can CTMS,
sure.
Which we will soon play around with.
You can ask for IM, being paid to go to the IM.
Right. I've got investigator meeting.
Right. I've gotten as much as 2,500. You might even be able to get more.
So we've done an entire webinar on contracts and budgets. Check that out if you missed it. Here's the correct slide for closeout visits. Here's the main objectives, okay? That was pretty much what we've discussed. We forgot to mention SUSARs. There's a list of SUSARs, suspected, unexpected serious adverse reactions. The PI needs to sign and date every SUSAR report and have them filed. Then there's the end dates for everyone on the delegation log, finalize the EDC, IRB closeout report, and then return study supply. So we did cover all those things. Not to jump around too much, but back to interim monitoring visits. Another thing you're looking at are the informed consents. So you're making sure that all screen subjects have signed the informed consent. If there has ever been a new informed consent triggered by a protocol amendment, then you know that your interim monitoring visit should focus more on making sure that those informed consent forms, the newly amended or the updated informed consents, have been signed. So that's another thing that you're doing. And in my opinion, your biggest role as a CRA from a safety perspective is making sure that the site is randomizing only subjects that are appropriate for being randomized. So you'll be amazed at how many things fall through the cracks. Patients that should have never been randomized get randomized, and sometimes CRAs miss that. And then if the FDA catches it, obviously it's bad for the sponsor, it's bad for the site, reflects poorly on the CRA. It's not good. It's a lose-lose situation. So really, your main focus should be safety, right? Are the subjects randomized that actually should be randomized? Do they meet the inclusion-exclusion criteria? And oftentimes those things fall through the cracks because there's just, studies are so complex these days. It's no wonder that these things don't get missed more often than they actually do. So that's probably the emphasis for both a site and a CRA prior to a monitoring visit, an interim monitoring visit. And then there's monitoring reports and letters for all visits. So the way it works, regardless of the type of visit, whether it's a site selection visit, an initiation visit, an interim monitoring visit, or a closeout visit, the order is you send a confirmation letter before your visit, then the monitor has their visit, then they send a monitoring report just to their CRO, not to the site. The site doesn't get the monitoring report. And then they get a follow-up letter. The site gets a follow-up letter with the action items. Same thing with every visit. Okay, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. As you can see, it's a lot, and it's dynamic, and it's never the same when it comes to interim monitoring visits. And it's really never the same with any of these visits because every protocol is different, and the emphasis that is placed on certain things change based on sites, based on protocol. So we will leave it open for a few minutes for questions. Otherwise, if you are interested in hiring us to do biz dev for you, meaning getting you studies and filling out feasibility surveys for you and helping you negotiate your contracts and budgets and helping you with your SOPs and your QA, we offer a monthly consulting service, month to month, no contract needed, $1,000 a month. We also have a lot of other products like a site owner academy, a CRA academy. Those are really popular. But our monthly consulting service, even if all we did was biz dev, meaning getting studies and completing surveys for you, it would easily be worth the money. But we add contracts and budgets, and then we add helping you with SOPs and source documents and just clinical operations. Like you have a consultant on call to help you with all these things, and sometimes do these things for you for only $1,000 a month. Okay, so that's why I think that people have been signing up and staying on longer with us, because of the value that we give. So hopefully you got something from these monitoring visits. Replay will be sent to everybody who registered. It's also going to go on YouTube, and it will be on the podcast as well if you want to listen in the car or at the gym or in the shower. And if you're listening on the podcast and you want to see the slides, go to YouTube. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Reach out with any questions, and see you again very soon. Take care.